and welcome everybody to another edition of Spincast. Joining us from the lovely state of Georgia, from the University of Georgia, we have Victor and CHUNWING both joining us today. Victor is the treasurer for their program there, and CHUNWING is the event coordinator for their club for esports at the University of Georgia. So without further ado, again, thank you both so much for joining us. I sincerely do appreciate you guys taking a little bit of time to talk a little bit about esports in general, obviously what's going on at the University of Georgia. I think our participants and people watching certainly appreciate that. Hope you guys are doing well, but I'll start off with you, Victor. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to the University of Georgia and how you got to the position you are with esports and et cetera.
Yeah, so I go to University of Georgia. I study computer engineering. I'm a second year. I got through esports mostly because I needed something to do after I got out of high school that wasn't soccer, because I'm also in the marching band, so that takes a lot of time out of my day, so I couldn't play soccer competitively. So I just picked up esports, and we picked up Rainbow Six, I think, second semester of my freshman year. We built a team, and then I took it over, and now we're like, top 20 in the country. We've won money at tournaments, so it's a great feeling to.
I'm going to pause you there. We just had. All right. Thank you all for joining us again for another edition of Spincast. Today, we've got a threesome joining us here from the University of Georgia. We've got Victor, who's the treasurer for the club, CHUNWING, who is the event coordinator, and AC, who is one of the advisors there for the club as well, which I understand AC just recently graduated. So congratulations on that one. And secondly, I'd like to thank all of you for taking a little bit of time to help us, again, understand a little bit more about esports in general, a little bit more about you guys, certainly, and a little bit about what the University of Georgia does in terms of their esports program. So without further ado, again, thank you. And I'll start off with you, Victor, if you can, if you don't mind, tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Victor. I'm a second year at the University of Georgia. I studied computer engineering and got into esports basically as a fallback after playing soccer, because I really enjoy the competitiveness. So I decided to bring back, my competitive aspect into esports. So I started playing Rainbow Six once I got to college and just really liked it. So I made a team, and then we kept on getting better. And basically we now have a fully, top 20 team in the country. So it feels great.
Awesome. Top 20. That's pretty good. Short amount of time. That's awesome. CHUNWING, how about yourself?
All right, yeah, I am here studying computer science and mathematics. I started getting into more of the sports and gaming scene probably when I first got my first computer. That was probably one of the first things I was going into when I got that computer, was, other than doing homework, probably just looking around playing video games. I got more into it during freshman year when I noticed that there were a lot more people that were into this sort of stuff like I was. And there was also a club for it. So when I joined, I realized how social this club really was, and decided that I really wanted to get more involved with this club.
Awesome. AC?
So from an esports perspective, started kind of outside the university, really involved with Nintendo, especially grassroots events, have had an awesome opportunity to run events around the country for games like Splatoon and Smash. Those events kind of led one thing to another. When I got to college, I saw that it wasn't only Nintendo fans around the world, but there was a great scene at the university to not only involve myself with some really cool friends, but also learn a lot more about different types of games, different types of organizations. Through UGA, we've been able to run Athens Online, which I think is at least the biggest collegiate LAN in the South. It might be the biggest one in the country. I think Rutgers probably is beating us out by now. But we've been able to run that event, do a bunch of monthly events throughout the club, 100-person Smash tournaments, have a good time. And the probably biggest moment of reflection for my involvement of esports at UGA was I was able to do a TED Talk on it a few semesters ago to kind of explain the role of communities within gaming and hopefully bridge the gap between esports for people who aren't really gamers and people who are parents and friends of gamers.
Awesome. Sounds very similar to our mission, so I can certainly appreciate that. There's no doubt about it. Now, and some of the things you guys were just talking about, I'm going to circle back to you, Victor, for a moment. from the competitive side, obviously you mentioned you were a soccer player at high school, you got into University of Georgia, started to look to do something again competitively, so gaming was a natural fit for you. Talk a little bit about the competitive side of what people would consider traditional sports in gaming, because I see them as pretty much the same personally, but I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, so definitely you still have, the typical leaders, you have captains and stuff, people who run things. We have, just like in high school, we have analysts, we have game film, we watch other teams, we watch ourselves, we take notes, and we have practices. Now, practices in esports are a little different because you really can't get better unless you play against other people. It's not like in soccer where I can do technical drills, I can go pass off a wall, I can go, work out. Obviously those things kind of help, working on your aim and stuff, but you really have to play against other teams. So we'll scrim other teams. We love scrimming against Mississippi State and UTSA and a lot of these other most notable Rainbow Six teams in our area. But it's kind of like you have a lot of the same elements. Maybe it's not as much of an impact physically. It's more of a mental impact, whether you can keep your cool and, I don't know, like have gunner glasses or blue light filters like I do. I don't have glasses, but I have filters on everything. So like you really got to just keep concentration. I think like in esports versus other sports, you can really you have to be concentrated like as much as possible. Because if one thing slips, then the whole operation falls. Whereas, when I was playing goalkeeper in soccer, I could not pay attention for like a couple minutes while my team was just, taking a corner somewhere and I could like just sit there. But can't really do that much in esports, and at least in the games that I play.
Yeah. Which brings up a separate topic altogether in respect of the mental wear and tear that a gamer typically goes through, which most people don't understand, is constant. You look at NFL or NBA or MLB, and there's breaks, right? There's half times, there's timeouts. On the NFL, you've got an offense and you've got a defense. Well, one is out on the field, the other one's kind of on the sideline taking a break, things of that nature. When you guys are competing and you're playing Rainbow Six, you're on your guard literally the entire game. Otherwise, you're dead, and you've hurt your teammates. So certainly a different aspect where your mental acuity, your focus, your concentration level has to be at a high for a significant amount of time. So a lot of things go into being able to achieve that as an athlete in terms of rest, proper nutrition, things like that. So that's a very interesting point. Kind of moving off of that a little bit, something that you brought up, CHUNWING, in respect to one of the things that you look forward to is the social aspect within esports at the University of Georgia. So if you can talk a little bit about that, the social aspect that really grabbed your attention, if you will.
Yeah. So most of the time, our participation count for whenever we have events mostly spreads through word of mouth. So if friends that like they play certain games, they would tell the other friends that play the same game, "Hey, we're having an event for this game. Would you like to join us?" It's a really great chance for people like that to meet new people, to join in on these events and maybe get familiarized with the school itself, because it definitely helps as incoming freshmen come in from all over around the state or even around the country to meet new friends in these certain events.
Yeah, no doubt about it. One of the things I love about it is the inclusivity about esports in general, where you may reach some students that typically may not join a certain type of club or sport, etc. But here, so many people game, right? If you were to go to any high school and have the student body raise their hand if they play any type of game, you probably get 99% raising their hand. So there's certainly some familiarity there. So I can certainly understand that. AC, sounds like out of the group, you probably have a little bit more of a background based on how your introduction went in respect to esports in general, some of the events. It sounds like you coordinated and have been to throughout the country, et cetera. So you've probably seen the most dramatic of changes considering how much more entrenched you may have been. Talk to me a little bit about where esports was when you first started to where you see it as today, and then finally where you hope it will go into the future.
So the clear-cut example of this that is really exciting comes from being able to work necessarily with like event sponsors. First coming into the game of like, oh, please, I am poor, give me money. I would love to run a gaming tournament. You go to a company and you're like, hey, esports. And they go, I've never heard of that word before in my life. Please leave my building. But nowadays, when you go to these companies, you go to Coca-Cola, you go to McDonald's, they have, if they don't have an esports department, they have a dedicated esports or gaming individual that's fully like equipped to understand the scene, understand how they can get involved, and really see that from the bigger picture. And that is a astounding change, especially for people at the college level, because now companies are looking to be supportive with gaming and esports as they are with other types of college endeavors, because not only, you know, are we really at a good time in our lives to build a loyal fan base for a product or service, but they can seem really cool to the local community when they say they're able to sponsor events. And because of that kind of transition, we are going from having a very hard time securing funding to having companies like Zaxby throwing $500 at us for a 100-person event. Whereas before, for the largest event that we were running, you know, like in the South for Collegiate Esports, was fighting tooth and nail to get $10.
Certainly can understand that. Well, the numbers obviously draw it out at this point. I mean, the number of eyes worldwide
Yes.
that are on esports are just mind-boggling, one. But you start to see it with a number of big name companies, whether it's State Farm, Snickers, Jack in the Box. I mean, these are all major companies that are now sponsoring the esports scene in general, on top of obviously many others. BMW, I think, just recently signed up as well. So certainly it's exciting to see obviously where we are with that, and it only leads to bigger and greater events and more participation, and hopefully that will continue along the same path. So back to you, Victor, for a second. So you play Rainbow Six. You mentioned, I think, Mississippi State and UTSA. Who is your biggest rival and why? You can say
Probably Mississippi State, just because like we played in basically a LAN tournament that went online a couple weeks ago, and it was like, well, it was Ole Miss's LAN, but Mississippi State, you know, they're way better than Ole Miss, so it's basically their LAN, and it like we like beat them to enter the finals in the losers bracket, so it's kind of like we got paid more than they did, so, and we typically, they're a really good team, but we typically like to beat them, and they want to play us all the time. And we typically, UTSA is also probably our biggest, just because we would always lose to them in scrims, but then we actually played them in a tournament, and we beat them twice. We beat them in the winners tournament, the winners bracket and the losers bracket.
Awesome.
And it was nice, you know. As much as I don't like doing like ego scrims or playing against teams just because I want to play against them, or like because we lost to them, like I'll play against a team that I think will test us in a way. But I don't know, we also like playing KSU just because you know, they're right next door to us, or the other best, like the similar caliber team to us, but you know, we might lose to them in scrims, but we beat them in real games, so kind of doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Scoreboard wins all the time, no doubt about it. So cool. CHUNWING, you talked about, and we talked about a little bit about the social aspect, but put yourself, if you will, kind of in all the students' perspective. What are some of the benefits, in your opinion, other than the social aspect? What are some of the benefits, in your opinion, that your student body at the University of Georgia really gets out of being a part of this esports club?
How student body gets, I guess most of the time we really do get a lot of the numbers aspect into it, because we definitely have numbers to show up for it. Whenever someone would ask us, hey, how many people have joined this club, or how many people have showed up at these clubs, we can at least give them a physical amount to tell them how big this thing really is, because a lot of people still don't realize how big of a thing esports has been growing recently in these couple years. Because I've seen all over the news, people are still saying, wow, is this still a sport? Is it still a thing going on? And it really is, and it's really influenced a lot of how society has started to develop. Because as of right now, as Victor said, there are tournaments going on around here, and then AC also said that companies are more focused towards it. So just saying that you were part of esports or had any sort of interactions with esports, at least companies from that are involved in it know that you have this sort of backing or the social standing within the club, and they'll at least know that what type of like job responsibilities you've ever held if you were ever to be involved in it.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Very cool. AC, kind of flip that and talk about more on the parent side. Sounds like you have a little bit of background there. What can you speak to in respect to, if you're just talking to parents right now, not to students, what are some of the advantages that the students have coming into the University of Georgia, and obviously once they leave the University of Georgia, having been a part of esports?
So It becomes an interesting question to tackle in that regard, because usually, especially when expressing to parents or people that aren't necessarily super competitive, um, balancing the idea of we have a gaming club becomes there's an initial hurdle to cross. That hurdle being you have to convince them that the club isn't just for people that are like the pinnacle of competitive titles. You know, they're the top at league, they're a master's rank, because a lot of times, especially coming into college, these kids aren't going to be there yet or really even plan to ever get there, because they're looking for a space that they can game with their friends. And so, in doing that conversation, the biggest thing we always try and focus on is the fact that it is for anyone of all skill levels. And that's like where we think we see a lot of the value for talking to parents, is trying to let them know that clubs like this at the University of Georgia, but also other types or universities, they exist so your kid who enjoys games can find other people that enjoys games. And for the first time, instead of playing with people online, which are real, you can have real connections. You can have these kind of in-person social connections that will then sprout out throughout the university, and you'll find more and more groups, because once you find one group of friends that plays Smash, you're going to find half of the university playing Smash, and there's always an avenue to kind of build off those friendships. So it's really focusing on the fact that it's super social to the parents, and then hopefully the light bulb goes off in their head that maybe it's okay that my kid spent this much time on a league server.
Yeah, no doubt. And a couple of important points there. That's the similar vein as traditional sports to a degree, right? I mean, if I love to play basketball, but there's no way I'm going to college to play basketball, but I can play intramural basketball. So you certainly have that collective of, hey, we're going to do this just for fun and to be social because it's something I've done and I like to do.
And the university finally figured that one out. College esports clubs in general have a hard time being recognized as like official things, because there becomes all the technicalities of universities. But with the quarantine, the University of Georgia has moved to having their intramural program now become entirely esports, because we can't be on campus to play. And it's really fun to watch, because we've been in meetings with a lot of people on the staff over the years and been like, hey, it's going to be great. People are going to love it. Here's how it fits, like the same missions as exactly like we usually would pitch it right alongside intramural as having like the same kind of goals and missions. Now that they're actually doing it themselves, it's like cool to see everything coming to light and students still having that opportunity to connect.
Sure. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I think that's important. So very, very cool. Victor, back to you for a moment. Talk a little bit about, to be at a level of competitiveness, to be good, obviously, to be able to beat the Mississippi States, the KSU down the road, et cetera. How much do you have to practice? How much do you actually have to put into your craft to get better? Talk a little bit about that. But before you do that, you got to unmute yourself, I think. For some reason, I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I was talking to my dad.
There you go.
It depends, like, I guess, like what your natural ability is, and like what basically your mental state. Because I've seen players who are very technically gifted who have mental blocks. Like they get super tilted, they get really angry, or they get really depressed. And I have players like that on my team that are top the leaderboard when they're doing great, but if it's not a good day for them, then they're way at the bottom. So it's physically, we typically have for us, we have like probably 2 practices a week. Our tournament that we did in for Ole Miss, I think we played 5 games on Saturday, which took about 13, 14 hours. We played from about 11 a.m. to 1 in the morning. And then we played the losers bracket and the finals on Sunday, which was about 2 p.m. to 3, 4 in the morning, because we had to play a best of 5 at like 1 in the morning, because like the way they were streaming all the games in this tournament was like absolutely crazy. But it was just because it was supposed to be a LAN tournament, so it was hard to fit. But yeah, we have a game every Friday in one of our leagues, and then we have a game every Wednesday in the other league that we play in. So these are 2 collegiate Rainbow Six leagues that we play in. And we'll have a scrim Monday, and then we'll have a scrim Thursday usually. Then we'll take Tuesday off. If we have time, we'll do a VOD review, or we'll work on strats, or people will play just like regularly with their friends, or we'll just play ranked or something like that.
Yeah, just like any other sport, you got to put the time in. Going back though to the all-day events, where you talked about like 11 until 1 in the morning. Now, is that straight, or is that breaks in between games, waiting for other teams to be available, waiting for streams to be available, things like that, or is it straight?
So that was mostly for waiting for streams and teams to be available, just because the way that we got swept on the second game, just because it was the best team in the country, and they have scholarships and they have their own computers and everything, so it's kind of like not really fair, but we got swept, and then we just kept winning our games in the losers bracket. So then it was and then we also had we had to move one of our league games to the tournament day game. So it was we had to sandwich this other game and this other league in between. So it was kind of rough. I mean, we still won, so I wasn't too worried about it. But that usually never happens. We usually would never play that long. We would play a max 4-hour game at most. And our other tournaments, we were supposed to play a tournament at Tennessee that I played in last year. I didn't have enough people to play Rainbow Six in that one, so I played as a stand-in in one of my friends' teams. But that was only a little bit of the day, and then we would just all come hang out at someone's house, just the Rainbow Six players, and just have parties. So
I was just clarifying so that the students and parents that hear it don't think, wow, he's playing straight from 11 until.
No, we took a couple hour breaks typically, yeah.
No, I've seen it. I've been there. I've been to DreamHack, for example, and we run events, so we know kind of the back end, how complicated sometimes it is waiting on teams and streams to be ready. So, but I just wanted to have that clarity so people listening don't think otherwise. CHUNWING, for you, you talked about event coordination and the social side of things. From a business perspective, for you specifically, as you look at career-wise, what does that provide you on your resume, per se, as an event coordinator? How does that help build your resume?
That really helps in terms of just honestly analyzing data, because in order to have a successful event, we have to make sure the event actually caters to people who are interested in it. And that does involve a lot of looking into what games are popular during that month, or how many people are actually playing that game. Um, I guess being able to recognize and see trends before they actually happen, or while they're happening, and then being able to predict what the next trend would be, is also an important skill set in my opinion for business, since people are always trying to hop on the next important thing that would make them money, especially for business. Um, Other than that, I'd say just being able to interact with people, because that's also a good thing to have. Being able to um, just be able to organize um, an event that involves being able to talk to just the people who actually join the events, and being able to coordinate between other coordinators, because I'm not just the only event coordinator here. We have around 4 to 5. We do spend a lot of time talking to each other to at least make sure the events work properly.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that's important to note, because I think most people probably thinking about it think, well, you send an invite and people show up and that's it. The reality is there's a lot of background work that goes into it to make this event that you're putting together successful. And obviously you run multiple events, so it could be obviously time consuming and a lot of effort that goes into it to ensure a good event, which is, again, good skill sets to have as you go into the workforce, depending upon the type of career you're looking to choose. So last question, back to AC for you for a moment. Looking at where we are in general in esports, there's certainly a lot of good, but just like with any other sport, there's some bad as well. If you can make a few changes and have the perfect esports world in place right now, what types of changes would you make or like to see happen, if you will?
Do you mean in terms of event makeup, or how situations are handled between players?
Whatever comes to the top of your mind, quite frankly, because there's a lot, right? You could talk about toxicity, inclusivity, diversity, how event makeups are. I mean, whatever really comes to the top of your mind.
So have had a lot of my opportunities have been within more family-friendly communities. I was in charge of pretty much the majority, if not all, of the Splatoon events for in-person, which is a Call of Duty Nintendo shooter. Set of Bloods, they shoot ink. It's weird, but it's a wonderful game. And those in-person events were a great kind of micro example of all the good that you can have come out of esports, but also all of the bad that you can come out of esports. That being really focusing on the fact that it's a environment where regardless of, you know, if you've never left your hometown before, or if you're someone who's pretty well versed in going to events and being outgoing, you all are on the same field of you're coming to play a game and you're coming to an event, you know, maybe at a water park resort in Wisconsin because you enjoy and want to be there. And those experiences really allow families of all kinds to come and see, you know, if they're not game players themselves, the parents get to see what their kids enjoy and really build a community. And they realize that like what's special about the gaming experience and being with people that you enjoy. But then you have the not so good parts, as it is more family friendly and everyone on the internet is not necessarily of that mindset. Stereotypes sadly do exist for a reason. And then it becomes the game of, oh, now that we're doing these big events and gaming's starting to grow and it's still Wild West industry, we have to police ourselves. Starting communities have developed code of conduct panels that deal with issues internally when they're brought forward, but it's not uncommon to have to deal with, you know, a member that might be trying to engage in acts with underage individuals or someone with blatant racism. Splatoon was a game that had a pretty much a Western scene, which is everyone outside of Japan, and then a Japanese scene because it was made there, and I think it's like same amount of copies sold in Japan as like the rest of the world combined. Don't quote me on that, but it feels like it. And having to deal with people who were racist towards the Japanese, you know, they blame it on their connection or the fact they were so much better and they had no life and all of these untrue facts. And within gaming, you have to find that middle ground where you really want to praise and keep the good parts up, while also trying to find a way to have the other stuff pushed to the wayside. Because esports is not at the point right now that something like basketball or the NFL would be like, where the negative and toxicity can be pushed under the rug because there's such a good mass of people. It's still so small that you can't really run away from these items. So when building a perfect esport, I think trying to just focus on the ability for everyone to feel like they have a place where they belong, especially at events, is vital. Games outside of the FGC and smaller grassroots accomplish this by only having pros play, because you attend an event as an attendee and you don't have to worry about all the different levels of toxicity because you don't have everyone playing and you cut out a lot of that middle ground. But then you also, of course, lose on the ability to feel like you're actually involved as a player, because that's what can potentially separate regular esports from other sports, because everyone has a chance to come to the court, even though they might not win just of the nature of how games are set up. But if you're really able to find a nice middle ground where you can host an event, people can come in person, and you can weed out that toxicity and make sure people are there because they like the game, not because they're wanting to be harmful or hurtful to other individuals, then I think you find the perfect mix. Or if you can't find that, the Overwatch League bringing events to towns is pretty cool too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that's a perfect message, no doubt about it. That's one of the reasons we actually came into business at Stay Plugged In. Again, dealing with a younger audience in general, our goal is to build that foundation, right? The foundation of sportsmanship and everything else that hopefully will bleed into their future as to this is the way it should be. This is why we do it. This is why we love it. And this is how it should be done. So guys, we are up on time. I do sincerely appreciate the three of you coming on. Go Dogs. Hopefully everything will
go. Dogs.
Go Dogs, baby.
Go Dogs.
Hope everything will go well for you the rest of this year. Stay safe. Again, we sincerely appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll be able to reconnect down the road a little bit, see how things are going there, and just touch base here. We'll Stay Plugged In. So again, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of the
Thank
day.
you so much.
Yes, sir. You got it. You guys
Thank
have a
you very
good day.
much.